Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder of Streamlined Properties and the team leader of Streamlined Properties on Market, brokered by eXp Realty. Whether you are looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Welcome back to another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. Thanks for stopping by. It's always great to have you, and I really appreciate you listening to this podcast. I've got a great show for you today. A couple reminders. You know how it works by now. 10-minute clips are available of all the shows on my YouTube, and those are a great way to see who we are and look at us talking, and then also take the podcast with you wherever you go. You know, in the car, in the gym, on a road trip, whatever you got to do. And if you really like the podcast, leave us a 5-star review. Make sure that you're subscribed wherever you like to listen to podcasts. This week, we have a Canadian real estate investor, Ben Julius. We're going to talk about multiple exit strategies and raw land development. Stay tuned. It's time. This is episode 77 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Ben Julius. Ben is the founder and CEO of Lionheart Development, which started as A-Game Investments. They were flipping houses, doing short-term rentals, conversions of small multis, and buy and holds. But over the last 3 or some odd years, they've transformed into land development and a land assembly company, which I can't wait to get into. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to go through the voyage of all the things that you've been through. So did it take you a long time to figure out what your ideal asset was, or did you just get, kind of interested in all of them and then see which is going to be your favorite?
That's a great question. So we ended up with land development very organically. So we'll get into, kind of how that journey happened. And it was really the result of a land assembly. So we started out in real estate. By trade, I was a college basketball coach and a college professor for, about 10 odd years, being assistant coaches and a head coach and whatnot. So moved back to Southwestern Ontario and started a whole new career. Was in a weird place. I was kind of getting out of coaching and doing different things. And I didn't really have a niche. So I was kind of lost as a person. And I met my wife, who really kind of sparked a huge flame in me to be a better person, create something that we can call our own. And I never really, I'm going to be honest, don't like working for people. I kind of give that vibe off. So I think that's kind of synonymous with real estate investors. Like, they start out because they're just not happy with something in their daily lives and they wanted something different. And that was kind of the path that I took. And I've never been great at working for people. So I have my own opinions. And I sometimes when I was a young lad, I like to voice them, and got me into some trouble. So
we sound like we could be related, Ben.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
So we got into real estate in about 2017. We went to an online course and an online course, a 2-hour seminar, and it spurred into a whole career, essentially, from 2 hours. And we sat down, went through a 3-day course, and then we joined a group from there, which really helped us learn the power of leverage. And in layman's terms, that never really happened before. I didn't know that you can use other people's money, and I didn't know that people would give you money to do things.
Yeah.
So, we kind of built our foundation on that, and started out with, the proverbial turnkey duplex. And I use these because there's no such thing as turnkey. You go in there, you buy it. Somebody sold it for a reason. So you got to, redo a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So, and then that just steamrolled. And from there, we just leveraged what we had, and we went from that to triplex, fourplex, and conversions, and then flips and short-term rentals. And I never was really there was always something. It was like, okay, I got to do this. Being a landlord in Ontario, Canada, is very similar to California, New York. So you don't have a lot of power. So
Yeah.
during COVID, we had a lot of people say, we're not going to pay rent. And our government said that was okay. And as a result, we started to hemorrhage money on a couple properties. So fortunately, the market went up and we were able to move them. But as that was going on, the whole goal was I bought this corner property, and we were going to convert it into 13 units. And then there was a middle vacant parking lot, essentially a dirt parking lot, 2 parcels over, that we bought, and we were going to put up a purpose build of 60 units. And so then my architect put a plant in my brain, or put a seed in my brain, and it was like, get the 2 in the middle, and now you can go big. And then we've got the 1 on the side. So we did that. And as a result, that was the birth of our first land development project. And it is now 8 stories, 145 units underway. Yeah. So, and condos, we've kind of minimized them to sell. Construction costs up here are high. So in order to turn a profit, you kind of got to move them. We're looking at other options of, do we keep them? Do we move them? All that. We go back and forth with our team quite a bit.
So the 145 unit development, that's going to be fully condoized. So you can rent some, keep some, sell some, figure out what you want to do in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm always a big believer, and I let the numbers do the talking. Try to keep the emotion out of it. I'm a very big believer in long-term wealth, and I know that it can really create generational wealth by holding these buildings and properties for your kids, kids, and so on and so forth. So that is always a conversation. However, the landlord-tenant laws aren't great here, so we kind of tend to move it, and that's why the business is partially in Canada and partially in the state of Florida now. So we will retain assets down in Florida. We'll do a mixture down there and up here. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at there. And what that assembly did is it created relationships for me with guys exiting the workforce. So what I mean by that is there's a major transfer of wealth going on right now as we speak, and it will be going on for the next 10 years. That, the baby boomers are exiting everything. They just want to retire on a beach, in a trailer park, do what they love to do. And they don't want to deal with these properties and these headaches with the municipalities anymore. So we were able to pick up several pieces of land off of that. So that was really kind of how we really did things, and parlayed from just one single development into multiple deals and multiple opportunities. So yeah, it's kind of how it happened in a nutshell.
Yeah, you mentioned something important. It's the lack of emotional attachment. And I think people kind of get tied up on that. I generally don't have very many emotions, but for my kids and like a random TV show. But like real estate, I was taught by my dad. So I was always kind of detached from it and looked at it as an asset, even though I love the houses that I lived in. I can move at any time. I will sell my house if the deal's right and get a new house. Is that something that you learned along the way? Because I like the first one's exciting, but then when you trade it, you're like, oh, interesting. Like this is good, or you're getting a lot. I think that's a real important point, though, for new investors and for seasoned investors to, break the attachment, or else you're going to make bad decisions.
Absolutely. You always have to live by the principle that everything's always for sale. And, it's funny, my wife and I last night, we have a short-term rental that isn't doing as well as we thought it was going to do. So we're looking to move it and, we don't even care about turning a profit. We just want to get our capital back.
Yeah.
And put that into something that's working in a better way. So when I was coaching, I always had this sentence and this philosophy that addition by subtraction. Right. So sometimes you got to get rid of some things that may look great to you, but in the long run, it will really help your business or help your life move forward. So we are no stranger to that. And that's something that we look to do. We just, we're in a negotiation on the sale of one of our developments, pre-approvals, giving our investors back 40% of their money in 2 years. So 40% nice. On their money in 2 years. So that's a great return for them in an uneasy market. So we are really happy about that. And I think that that's kind of the route that we go, is that with development, you have to have exit strategies at multiple points. You don't have to take them, but you gotta, you gotta see the off ramp and you gotta say, okay, are we going in or are we going forward? Right. So I think that's important to have those and have those connections that are available to you if you do want to get out of one property and move forward. So, yeah.
You said another thing that I really like. It's the retention of capital part. I think a lot of people get overly obsessed with having to turn a profit after they've held it, but sometimes you just need the money back. Like, I'll just take the down payment back, even if I take a little loss. Like, you're not going to win them all, but like, I'd rather repurpose it into something else. Like you said, hey, it's not doing as well as we'd hoped. Let's just take it and do something. Or you decide you just don't like it. You buy a 2-family and you realize like you're the worst landlord on earth. So it's maybe, time to repurpose that into something else that maybe you can manage better.
Yeah. I mean, I think it works in a lot of different things. I go to the mall, I'll buy a pair of jeans right off the rack and not try them on, get home and they're not as sexy as I thought they would be. So you got to turn it right back, get your money back. So I think it goes hand in hand in real estate and whatnot. So, but yeah.
Yeah. So describe why this like land assembly and land development, is it a better scale for your money, or is it something that you also just enjoy more?
So that's a great question because right now, land develop in Ontario, in my real estate network and group, land development's all the craze because the margins are sexy. They're good. They look good. It's never really the case at the end of the day. Like you always have to have a major contingency in this game in order to make sure that you don't lose your shirt. Because, when I got into this, I had an old guy tell me that land development is the best way to, make a lot of money, but it's also the fastest way to lose money. So we really try to, move at a snail's pace per se. So we don't miss anything, right? Moving too fast, sometimes you make mistakes. But for me, coming into this niche, I really enjoyed being a career coach for the longest part of my life. I really enjoyed working with teams and yes, on the little things I was working with plumbers, electricians, those guys, but it was for one-off things, right? It wasn't for, a long period of time. I wasn't building camaraderie. I didn't feel like they cared about me. They just wanted me to pay them and get my project done. So in the land development, I'm able to build my team, whether it's from marketing, capital raise, construction management, architecture, urban planners, which we use up here, which are land use lawyers where you guys are at. So, I can build my team, my legal team, and it's not just it's not just 2 months of work. It's 3 years of work. So I take my principles as a coach and I apply them to my team building, and it really works out. And I really enjoyed that. And since I stepped away from coaching, I was always yearning for that and looking for something to fill that void, and land development did. And it also just so happened that the margins you don't get angry over them.
Yeah. Do you think that, I was thinking when you were talking about the coaching and the changing, and given what you said in the beginning, where it's like, well, corporate culture working for other people wasn't that great. That's how I feel too. And some people will call it like a control thing for me as well, but I think it's just like a management thing. I have a very hard time being like at my best if someone doesn't want me to do the work the way that I want. And a lot of times when you're working for other people, their processes are antiquated. They don't want to move forward. And, I don't like to be an automaton for them. Do you feel like you, at least being on the front end of the project, helps you build a team the way you want, just like a coach? Like, look, if the players aren't going to do what you want, they're going to have to go somewhere else, or they're going to sit on the bench. So they have to work within your system to be successful.
Totally. And I hired my latest hire was an operations manager, who was one of my former players, because he gets it. He knows what I like. I don't have to, I can yell at him and he just shrugs it off because it's Coach Ben, yelling at me again, like I did 10 years ago. So, but no, I mean, it's a direct, when I was coaching, I always looked for the, not the best players, but the right players. And it's no different in how I build my teams here. I might not have the so-called best construction management guys, but I have the right guys for this project.
Yeah.
Right? I have the right architect for this project. And I give them full autonomy to do what they do best, because I'm not pouring concrete. I'm not, I'm not sitting on a CAD file for hours trying to figure out how to move a wall. I pay those guys to do that. But for me, the relationship, it's building the relationship that was, you talk about, your podcast is the Zen and the art of real estate. That's the Zen for me, is building those relationships. It gives me so much gratification and so much, I get excited to get up in the morning and get to my day, to get to my meetings, to get to what I need to do with these guys. And it's really, not only is it extrinsically valuable, it's intrinsically valuable at the same time. So yeah, that's kind of why I gravitated towards this. And it's why I think that this company is going to be quite successful in the next couple of decades.
Yeah. I mean, since we're on these like kind of sports analogies, it's really a Moneyball philosophy. Like you're not going out getting the flashiest ones. You're getting the people who are going to get the job done and then help
That's
them
right.
do better, because each of those people are focused on making the team better, which is what makes investments better. If you have like one who's really in it for themselves, it always takes the whole thing down. A contractor who's keep trying to bill up for their own money and doesn't care about the project's going to ruin the project.
Absolutely. And it affects the end product. And at the end of the day, when, we're going on to the fifth, sixth, seventh major development, we're judged by our last development, right? So we need to make sure that product is on point and on brand. So you're 100% right. And you got to find the right players for you.
Yeah. So just going like all the way back, I think I know the answer to this, but like when you were growing up, were you even interested in real estate at all?
So it's interesting. My father was an athletic director and a women's basketball coach. So I think if we went back and interviewed him, one of the things he would say his biggest regret was not buying student housing for his players. Because in Canada, we don't give athletic scholarships, full athletic scholarships. So, we've had multiple conversations about that. And I've always known the power of real estate, but I didn't really know real estate until about 2000, I want to say 19, when we started kind of moving some things and was like, oh, I can do this full time. Or you mean I don't have to work for somebody else? When I was growing up, I need to do whatever I can for the love of basketball and the love of coaching and stay on the sidelines and do these things. But growing up, real estate, I was always good with woodworking and hands and stuff. So I was very, like, my generation, we were in Canada, we were pushed to go to university. I should have never gone to university. I should have just gotten a trade, got a business diploma, and moved forward with life. But yeah, I didn't really know where real estate would take me until about 2019. And then it was like mind blowing, boom. Right. But yeah.
Yeah, but you must also like the aesthetics of it, given what you said, like you were good with your hands and that. And I think that's important too. I think investors who are only focused on the money are going to have a shortfall at one point. Like I have just a personal obsession with houses. I'll look at as many, I don't care how many houses I show, on market clients or how many dumps I look at. I just really think houses are awesome. And I like the idea now, obviously, for people who are at scale, affordable housing or just providing, good luxury housing, you're still providing a product that's going to make somebody happy. Do you have that kind of feels good in these bigger developments, especially with what you're doing with these 145 units on those lots that you got?
One of the things that we're doing in our developments now is we've created this system called the Ori Living. We didn't create it. Sorry. We did a strategic partnership with a company called Ori Living System. And it has really transitioned the way that I view development up here. So we can create, I don't want to say micro units because we're not that small, but we're taking 350 to 400 square foot units and we're creating them as usable space of 700 square feet. So, you have a bachelor or a studio apartment that actually acts as 3 rooms where you have your home office, your entertainment room, and your bedroom all in one. And they just move it with various points of the button. So when you talk about affordable housing, everybody wants to say affordable housing is government subsidized workforce housing, blah, blah, blah. That's not the truth. I mean, we look at it as affordability. Who can get into the market? Our market up here in the Greater Toronto area is we have so much of a lack of supply and so much demand that our housing prices have spiked, and they're not coming down. Everybody thought these high interest rates was going to drop the housing, it just kind of plateaued. It dipped a little bit. It comes back up in certain areas, but at the end of the day, it's simple economics. It's supply and demand. So we're really trying to appeal to a market where we can get affordability. So, a 25-year-old out of university, college has an opportunity to get into their first place. An investor has an opportunity to get into their first place for under, I think we're going to be marketing those at $450,000 to $500,000, which is in this area, which is a great price point for a fantastic opportunity. But, we talk about looking at houses. One of my best projects that I did as myself was I took an 1855 stone house that was limestone, and we turned it. We actually lived in it. My wife when she was pregnant with our first son, and she was sitting there pregnant painting stairs because it was COVID and we couldn't get anybody out. And so so I love the architecture. I love looking at houses. Doesn't matter, big, small, ugly, beautiful. I'm the same way as you, that real estate catches my eye no matter where we are. And, sometimes when we first started out, we almost caused a couple accidents by driving. Oh, there's a for sale sign. Stop. And somebody almost rear ends us. So yeah, it's, I hear what you're saying about that love of just the tangible. I can go hug it, lick it if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm playing the stock market, or I'm just investing and passively. But yeah, I'm a big believer in brick and mortar.
Yeah.
As you can see behind me.
Yeah. I feel like that's a big transition for people who were in other businesses or investing in other things to real estate because of the tangibility. When you go and you realize, okay, not only can I touch the building, but I also have the land. So even if the building, it gets, hit by lightning or something or burns down, like I still own the land. And then the land, you can build something else. And I think like knowing that you own something that you can go to see and interact with is much different. Like you said, stocks or crypto, these things that just exist in cyberspace, and you either have a piece of paper that says you owe it, but you can't really do much with it other than sell it if it even exists. Is that something that still becomes even more exciting when you start building, 145 units, and then you're like, wow. But I wanted to touch on one more thing, because you said something I think is really important. Like a lot of people, when they talk about affordable housing, they do think government subsidized, which again, that's great also. But there's a subset of building affordable housing as investors also that is for your first time home buyer, so they can buy a condo. Like that's the problem right now, is that just new, like younger people, like you said, 25 to 30, they can't buy homes anywhere. They're too expensive. So that's also affordable without the government affordable housing. And I think it's important on all aspects of that.
Yeah. I mean, I always like to see the housing market is it's almost like a cyclical situation where if I were to build a luxury home and somebody moved into a luxury home, they've upgraded. So they've actually created 4 different entry points to the market, whereas the first time home buyer is going to leave that first time house, get into the next one, and everything levels up. So by us creating, even at the base level, we're allowing people to get into the market so they can get to that next level when somebody goes. Because as we all know, these interest rates didn't hurt the people leveling up at the top. They hurt the people getting in and maybe trying to get out of that first time home into that second one, which creates a mass amount of housing down the road, right? So, these are type of situations that I look at instead of just that first entry point. And in the marketplace where, everybody wants to say, well, just build more rentals. Well, that's essentially not the way to do it when you want to create more housing. Let's get people into the market so now they can afford to get to the next step, and then they can maybe reinvest that funds and create 4 or 5 more rental properties versus just one, right? So, I try to look at the big picture as much as we can. And when I was coaching, it was always, you had your goal met, like written down for you. It was a championship every year. That was your goal every season. But the whole big picture was to build a program that you're at the excellent. You might not win a championship every year, but you're there every single year competing. And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to build a program that we hit every niche market that we can, and we open up housing for different avenues and different types of people, and we give a need to what is there. So that's kind of what Lionheart Development transitioned from A-game investments to Lionheart Development. We have courage, integrity, those type of things as we go through our business, and we just felt that A-game wasn't the banner to fly that flag on.
Yeah, I love the stepping stone concept because I feel like if your first time home buyers now always have to reach for the first time, it might not be a stepping stone if the market turns bad and they all bought in, and you're in another mortgage issue like 2008, people are in trouble. So if they don't have to reach, at least if they have appropriate inventory and a price point that makes sense instead of like putting their life savings into something, it's a safer transition to say, like you said, go from level 1 to level 2, condo to 3-bedroom house. Then maybe you go bigger. Or like you said, maybe you're at a 3-bedroom house, you can get a HELOC and then you get your first investment property, and then you're helping provide more rentals. And one other thing I think that you said is important that can go to investors as a whole. Like if you don't, we were talking about your coaching, if you don't win the championship, like that's not a failure. That's just a goal. Giannis said it like last year. Some reporter asked him, like, do you consider the season a failure? Quote. And he's like, well, I mean, like I was MVP and I don't think he won the MVP. Jokic won it, but I got to the finals. Like I wouldn't really call that a failure. Everyone else would say it's the best season of their lives. And that's investing. Like every property doesn't have to be the home run. You learn something from it, trade it out, try something new the next year.
Yeah. I mean, it's every property we learn so much. Right. And I think that, we tend to forget what we've learned. Like when I come on shows like your show here, Jonathan, I get to actually relive everything and go back and see what we've accomplished and where we failed. Like it comes right back into the forefront. And I think sometimes when you're going on this journey, I know for me, the success that we've had, it's because I don't really look back, right? I keep moving forward. I say, okay, that's a roadblock. What are we doing? We're going to adjust quickly. This is how we're going to get around it. And then the next day we move forward with that. Right. So, but it's always important to look back to know where you were to where you're going and where your plan is. And I think that that's part of it. And there's no such thing as a failure. There's no such thing as a mistake. Failure is just an opportunity to learn. I know we've heard those quotes so many different times. My teams learned more from a 4-point loss than we did from a 20-point win or even a 20-point loss, right? Like the more the failure hurts, the better you're going to learn from it, right? And I think that's kind of how my whole life has been like that. My mother likes to say that I can fall in a pile of crap and come out smelling like roses, but it's just because you guys got to move forward, right? Like the world doesn't care what you went through yesterday. And I think like there was a time where I was in a really dark place and I had my wife helped pull me out of it. I didn't know her at the time, but I met her. She literally grew flowers in the darkest part of me. And I was able to kind of pull out of this darkness that I was in and move forward with my life. But nobody cares. Everybody's got their struggles. Everybody fights their own demons. And I think especially in real estate investing, it's such a roller coaster of emotion. It's not a lot different than when I was coaching in a game. Like you go through every single emotion from sad to wanting to strangle a kid to, to happy to elated to all these emotions in 2 hours. And a real estate project has those very similar emotions, just on a lot longer curve. But everybody's going to go through crap. Everybody's going through crap. When we hang up this phone, we got to go deal with different other stuff. So I think moving forward is a very important part of this. And that's kind of how we were able to create some success.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is supposed to be the mindful approach to real estate investing and getting a strong mindset from a coach like yourself who has that sports background. I think it's helpful because that's the way to get through it. Real estate is a roller coaster. Like you said, one property is a roller coaster. One day you think you're going to make 40,000, then you find out there's a structural repair. Now you're making 11,000. You're like, oh, and then the next day you find out, oh, actually, you don't have to do, this sewer project. So that is it in a nutshell. Yeah. And the bigger the project, the more opportunity for more roller coasters. But I think that's, what we sign up for, but you have to get to the point where you're kind of at peace with it and you're working, like you said, together with other people who are all on the same page. So that takes the edge off too, to have partnerships and employees around you that are all like, okay, we can handle this together instead of being off on your own. Like you said, when you met your wife, that changed a lot of things because it was like, you go from this time where it's just you to support. And then you're like, oh, that feels good. that helps.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, this is Jonathan. Thanks for listening to another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. On this brief interlude, I wanted to tell you that we have a mailing list. I actually don't love mailing lists. There's so much. This is not an automated mailing list where you get on a drip campaign. These are written once a month, will eventually be at once a week again by me, direct, and they're not spammy. So if you want to sign up for our mailing list, you can go to bit.ly/streamlined with a D mail. Bit.ly is bit.ly/streamlined mail. See you there. So you said something in the questionnaire that we sent out that I wanted to talk about. You said this is really important because everybody kind of championed the BRRRR strategy for a long time, but now BRRRR really is not working in most areas. What are investors in your area or you doing to combat that? Where this shiny object, which is great, the BRRRR principle, how are you getting around it or figuring out how to repurpose those investments?
So yeah, I mean, the whole BRRRR strategy in my market is a myth. It's a unicorn, as people call it, right? The perfect BRRRR was the unicorn. It was probably most time it was in a remote area that doesn't adhere to this, or you picked it up super off market by accident type of thing. I think a lot of people that I'm seeing are trying to get into land development. One of the things that our community is doing is putting AUDs, so accessory unit dwellings, so in backyards and whatnot. So instead of having a duplex conversion, all of a sudden you can do a 3 to 4, and that's kind of how people are doing. But they're not getting a lot of money out of BRRRR. So they're really, I think it's changed from getting all your capital back and your renovation budget to getting some of your down payment back and taking that down payment and applying it to another property versus getting your renovation money back as well. That's going to have to stay in. Our housing prices are pretty aggressive here. So I always say that if you're doing anything under 5 units, you're probably only going to get one refinance before you're in a negative cash flow position.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of colleagues who are moving to the 8 to 12 to 19 unit range and getting more partners and going bigger. That's what I'm seeing a lot of. We shifted in 2021 early to land development. So we were able to kind of get our feet wet in this game to move forward. But I'm seeing what a lot of people are doing to pivot is to kind of pool resources and go bigger versus continue with the smallest thing, which is a travesty because now that niche small is going to be left alone for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I was started to call something that I call reverse BRRRR, which is not really, it's switching the first 2 R's. But like you said, in this philosophy, you have to leave the money in. It's buy rent instead of buy rehab. You rent first and just hold the property that needs the rehab. But the tenants don't care. They like it the way it is. And you're just getting solid rents while you're getting appreciation. Then maybe the tenant stays 2 years. And then when the tenant leaves, maybe the market's up. You have appreciation. Plus you have the money to do the rehab. You do the rehab then you can sell or either, refinance then and you get a windfall. That I like better in those markets. But again, requires more cash to leave in the deal to make reverse BRRRR work.
Yeah. And we have, there's a lot of people who are investing in those BRRRRs that people are doing that aren't getting their money back. And now it's left in that deal and it gets changed over from whether it's straight percentage and interest to equity in the deal so that they can get something back eventually. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of different things. I have a colleague who's a broker who's taken over, I want to say 5 or 6 defaults and he's finished them on his own dime and sold them to get his clients their money back. So, yeah. Which is courageous of him. And I think that's, I don't know if I'd be able to handle that, but he's done it and he's come out. I think he's showed a little bit of loss on some of them, but it's just an interesting time. I want to say it's a very confusing time for real estate investors. And, you keep seeing articles, the investments are debt. No such thing. 30 in Canada, 30% of home purchases are from investors. So that's not going down. That's not dying, right? And I think as people transition more to working remotely, there's going to be more rent. People don't want to own. The next generation, I know, if I didn't have a family and I was a single guy, 25 to 30 years old, I'd be like, okay, I can work remotely. I want a condo. I can leave, travel, and don't have to worry about it. So I really think, and I tell this to a lot of people, that in North America, we're one of the only cultures who values front yard and backyard space. Everything else is straight up or boxed in, and you get a postage stamp for a backyard. But the times are changing here, and the only way that we can meet our density is to start making smaller dwellings, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we all at some point, probably during the pandemic, realized like we don't need all the stuff that's in our house. So I see a trend toward downsizing much more like before the kids are out of the house. Obviously, you want rooms, for your kids, but like we just don't need all the stuff that we have generally. So the idea of minimalism, of course, is going to get more important as people have to downsize. But I think there's a lot of like conscious downsizers out there from what you're saying. Like, do I really need all this space? Is it a better use? Or like you said, hey, look, now it's, we need to work from home. So some of these bedrooms now need to be offices, but we can get much better use. I don't have to go pay for a commercial office, that I used to be in. So I think that I think it's interesting. And I think ADUs and things like that provide opportunities for everybody to differentiate and work with their houses, like mother-daughter units. Obviously, multifamilies can work that way. You can live in a multifamily together as a family now. Everyone doesn't have to be a house hacker or an investor, as well.
I have a colleague who is a small-time developer, builds houses, and he bought 4 or 5 lots. They're not great lots, but he's creating multi-generational homes. So he's putting elevators in them, units, but they're for one family to have grandparents, parents, kids, great-grandparents, wherever it may be, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how I want to live. My daughter lives in a house over my garage now. My son lives close by, but I can envision living in like a 3 family in separate units, like even as adults, considering that hopefully I'm not annoying as a parent at that point. But I mean, I have a lot of clients who live intergenerationally, and or even relatives who come for a longer stay, have more opportunities. And that's, intergenerationally, it's a better spend. Everybody's putting it into the pot together. And then it's a legacy between the family as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to live with my parents because I'd probably kill them or they'd probably kill me. But
it's not for everybody.
My parents got 3 boys, so to have us all under the same roof again probably would not be the best scenario.
Yeah, I think they're fine, skipping out on that as well.
Yeah,
so now,
totally.
Now that you guys are going into America and you're looking into Florida, can you, I mean, just for the audience's benefit, a lot of it's US, but we definitely have Canadian listers and other countries. What differences are you seeing between what type of deals you're looking at now in Florida as opposed to what you're looking for in the GTA?
Yeah, right. So in the GTA, we look for build and sell, essentially, opportunities to create density and sell those off and move forwards. Where down in Florida, we look for difference. Like we want to create apartment buildings and keep those into our portfolio, as that really creates your generational wealth moving forward, right? So we're not just looking at Florida, we're looking at some other states, basically the southern eastern seaboard, that are, I don't want to say favorite to landlords, but at the end of the
Not
day,
against
if you
them.
don't pay, right? Like if you don't pay your rent, you got to leave, right? Like that's where Ontario kind of just differs. So if you don't pay your rent, you're cool for 12 months.
Yeah, that's how New York is. Also, I remember going to an eviction hearing like 5 years ago for one of my properties. I'm like, oh, this should be no problem. Tenant hadn't paid in 6 months. We were nice. Get in there. They said like they were trying to pay, and the judge literally looked at me with 6 months of non-payment. He says, well, they're trying to pay. Like, and the tenants don't understand. Like, we pay our bills for these properties through your rent. Like, now we have to go into our other money to do that, which throws off everything. It's tough.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul when those situations happen, right? So, no, I mean, what we look for down there is like, so we have a property right now that we're under negotiation to do a mixture. So we're looking at putting 40 to 60 townhomes on one of the sites. They're right across the street from each other, same seller. And then we're looking to do 2 apartment buildings of about 100 to 150 each building. And then that way we can sell the towns to basically finance the apartment buildings. And now that build becomes very, very simple, but we can also now get all the money back that we're looking to get and have a cash flowing asset for years to come. So we're looking at situations like that. I did kind of go down the rabbit hole of the mobile home park. Not for me, which is okay. I mean, it's for a lot of people, but we're really looking to continue our philosophy of creating density in areas that want it, whether it be condo cells, townhomes, or straight rental properties down in Florida area. I gravitate to Florida because that's where my family spent a lot of time over the last 30 years of my life. Since I can remember, since I was about 10 years old, we were going down to the same area all the time. And, my wife and I went down there for a full month last year and we loved it. So we're looking to take our business down. And then when you find out the difference in construction cost down there versus up here, it works out to be something a little bit more attractive, as well as the timelines for approval. So up here, we just got approval on a property, the one out of the 145. It's been essentially almost 3 years in the making, whereas down there, we're looking at 8 to 12 months for approvals and situations. So that's also a reason why we are looking at that ancillary market for us. So.
Yeah, and I believe with insurance costs rising, new construction and ground up is much better on the insurance costs in Florida than taking over existing older buildings. Those insurance costs are much higher at this point because they're not taking into account all the new weather anomalies for Florida.
Yeah, so it's funny because the last hurricane was right in the same areas that we are looking at these properties. This property was okay, but when you build towns, you're building 3-story towns. First level is garage. You won't get insurance on the first level if you don't do that.
Yep.
And the first level of the buildings is 11 feet of parking, and then we build up, right? So parking and garages and whatnot. So you got to be above the floodplain, which I like because when you can't do underground parking, which is fantastic because that's our biggest cost up here. And, to get out of the ground on one of the projects we have, we're looking at $15 million minimum, right? So you're like, that is a third of your budget. What the heck's going on with that? And once you get out of the ground, you're pretty quick, but getting out of the ground is the hard part up here. So doing everything on grade is attractive for the bottom line.
Yeah, I agree with that. That actually makes a lot of sense. And having lived in Florida 14 years, I understand the kind of water issues and a lot, but it makes sense once you see the builds, like it's safer for everybody. I mean, I guess the auto insurers aren't going to like it that all the cars are going to take a hit, but hey, that's what you
Not
get.
my problem.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have some open space on the bottom, so might as well make it a garage.
Right.
Yeah. So as you guys move forward with Lionheart, what's your hopes for bigger plans in the next? Obviously, you're expanding to Florida, but what do you want to? What's a major project that you'd like to get into that you haven't yet?
So, my wife always calls me a dreamer. Lionheart Development, it's realistically Lionheart, like Lionheart Group, right? So we want to branch off into. At the end of the day, Jonathan, I'd love to own a sports team. Right. And I think that's something that I would love to. I'd love to be part of an ownership group.
Yeah. That's my dream since I was a kid. all I did was be a GM in my head growing up. So we probably are related, I think, at this point.
Right. So, we've talked about there's different scenarios that we want to look at outside of real estate that we're going to use real estate as an avenue to get there. So when we talk about sports, like the athletic realm, I'd love to potentially create a athletic high school up here in Canada that's just strictly hockey, basketball, golf, baseball, football, like some of those other sports that these kids kids don't have to pay tuition to play, right? Because up here we don't value sports the way that you guys do down there. Like there's not the cult following that we have that you guys have down there. So we want to be able to have these inner city kids be able to not have to pay to play. And I think that's kind of a dream of mine for a long time. I love the sound of my own voice being a coach. So I don't mind, wouldn't mind speaking on different avenues, but I have a lot of dreams and goals and I never count anything short. But in terms of real estate, it's hard to say a project that I don't want to do because if something comes across my desk, I'll never say no. I'll look at it. I'll go through my parameters of the key performance indicators that it has to hit. And at the end of the day, as we said earlier, if the money makes sense, if the return is there, I'll have a tough time saying no.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way I am.
I have a project that I don't, it's not doesn't exist, but I know this is a project you'll like because we're both basketball people. But like there's this investor, Jesse Wigg, and he renovated a high school into apartment complexes. Of course, it's always cool to me because they have a basketball court, and I always wanted to, like, you know, like be in a complex or like renovate a school for a single family, a small school, and just have the court. That's right up your alley, right? I already know it.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. You know, that's been discussed. Like, like, let's find a school somewhere so that I can renovate the Jim Hoosier style.
Exactly.
And just have all the guys come down and we can be 40 plus, rolling ankles, blowing knees, but have a great time doing it.
Growing up, my dad, we had one house that he flipped every house we ever lived in, but we had full court for a while. So we had lots of full court basketball because he was really into what you're saying, though. Like, he really wanted to make those experiences. So we would make our house and then of course, when it got great, he's like, we're selling it. I'm like, what? It's the greatest house ever. He's like, well, we're going to make X amount of money. I'm like, okay. You know,
that makes sense.
That's how I learned, though. I learned the hard way to not get too emotionally attached to the houses because you could just go, then we would just go and do it again. It would take a little while, but it was kind of fun. What's your favorite, like, personal, if you're just making a personal investment, you know, non-syndication style, what's your favorite, you know, that you would do right now? Like, do you like flipping or do you, no one enjoys landlording. I'm not even going to ask that. That's silly.
I would have to say flipping. We did during the pandemic, we did 4 houses and I loved the design part of it.
Me too.
I got to put my touch on it. You know, everybody always likes to say, oh, your wife did such a great job designing the house. I would take serious offense to that. I'm like, sure, she picked out the pillows and the colors and the stick. No, the whole layout and everything, that was me. So I did our own house a couple times. As you said, we flipped 3 to get to where we are now. Right. Yeah. So I really enjoy that. And I think maybe I'll go back to that when some of these developments and the purchase prices here have taken down, because it's always just fun. I say that fun relative. There's always problems that happen, but no, I really enjoyed the whole length of time that they were and the design and to see your vision come to life pretty quickly. Whereas in development, you can see your vision come to life stage. Yeah. So the flip was like, boom, good. I really enjoyed that. So if I had to go back to smaller investing, I'd go be a house flipper for sure.
Yeah, I really like doing about one at a time. The last one I did, I really wanted to live in, but it just wasn't in the town that I wanted to live in. But yeah, right. I like it. I don't get that attached because then I see like, oh, what am I going to get for this? Okay, that sounds good. You know, right. But again, it's still a win-win. You know, that end user is going to be super happy with it because we did a really good job. So I like that where it's a feel good. You don't feel like you're not cheating anyone because I'm making money. Like, I did a good job.
Yeah. And I really sometimes enjoy, from a therapeutic standpoint, I like being on the tools every once in a while, whether it's just doing some trim, hanging some drywall. It just kind of zone out and you get to kind of, nobody talks to you. You put on your music, you do what you want to do. But if you haven't noticed, I'm an extremely competitive individual. So I have a really good friend who is an award-winning renovator. He's won national awards up here in Canada. So I always try to use him as a benchmark to try to get him. But he's, he's done his craft over several years. But yeah, I mean, when I look at my career in anything, I always try to align myself with somebody and create a story in my head. I was a big Michael Jordan fan, and I know he used to do this. He used to talk about it, whether it's true or not. I mean, whether somebody was supposedly talking bad about me or doing different things. And I really try to just kind of put that person in my sights to what they're doing and not be better than them, because I don't think that's healthy, but to get to their level and exceed what their level is right now. And I think it's something that most competitive people do, but don't talk about. And, we do things. You don't just do things to do things. As when you're a competitive person, you do things to be better than somebody and be the best. So I think that's kind of, and nothing for me has always been like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I can probably do that. Let's figure out a way to do it. So this is kind of how my whole life has been. And yeah.
I feel like the competitiveness does end up turning out the best product most of the time. If you want to be the best, it's not necessarily the money for a lot of us who are competitive. I want to turn out the best product. Hopefully that does make the most money, but I'll always spend more on a flip or something to make it be better because I'm okay compromising that. Maybe I'll get more, but like I need it to be the way that I expected it to be.
Yeah.
So Ben, where is the best place for people to get in touch with you? Is it at, what do I got it here? Oh, lionheartdevelopment.co.
Yes. .com was taken. So it was .ca. So we went with .co.
Yeah.
So lionheart.co is where you can reach me, or Coach Ben Julius on Instagram. That's kind of the avenue that I've gone most with lately, as well as I'm on LinkedIn as Ben Julius. Yeah, so that's kind of where you want to go. I'm always open for a chat. I'm always open for, if somebody has a question about land development or anything, I'm always here I love talking. So I love talking about it. I love helping people. So that's kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I'm thinking investors pickup league, but that's what we'll have to work on that.
Listen, it's not that JetBlue's got, a hub in Buffalo and a hub in Jersey. So you organize it, I'm there.
Yeah. Let's get it. All right, man. Well, no, it was great talking to you and great to meet you. And I look forward to staying in touch, seeing what you guys do at Lionheart. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Jonathan. Thank you for having on me. I look forward to following you and seeing where all these podcasts go and all that. So thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it too. This was episode 77 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Ben Julius of Lionheart Development. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.